Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. We've got another Top 5 Guns video for you. I've got a special guest here with me today, Mr. Hank Strange. Get your butts over there and subscribe to Hank Strange. All right. We are going to be breaking down the top 5 guns from Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. It's a continuation of the previous Black Ops game and getting into the Cold War, so lots of 80s.
Yeah, this
guns.
is our era.
This is
We're
our
80s
era.
dudes.
Yeah, this is our time to shine.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool game. I haven't had a chance to actually play it yet, but we did converse with some of these young whippersnappers.
Yeah. We did research. Yeah, we've got people who are under 25 years old
That's right.
telling us what they think are the coolest guns in the game and why. And we happen to actually have those guns. So
we do.
That's an advantage we have over them, even though we're some old fogies.
That's all right.
Yes.
Lots of cool stuff on the table here to talk about, and we're definitely going to get into this a bit. So the categories that the guns are broken down to in the game encompass a wide variety of different firearms and that handle a wide variety of different purpose-driven tasks in the game. It is set in the 80s, in the Cold War, so lots of cool weaponry from that time. And you always go back to the movie Heat. Chad and I have been talking about doing a top 5 guns on the Guns of Heat.
Best gun movie ever.
Yeah,
Yes.
hello.
Yes.
But we do have a lot of the similar guns. So, you were getting out of the Vietnam War, getting into the Cold War, and, lots of good technology out there, some transitional technology. So you would have some older guns still in use as well as some newer models. So we're going to do a little bit of all-encompassing one. So let's start out with the, so this is the XM177, but in the game, I think it's just called the X17 or the XM17.
Okay.
So, the names in the game aren't always exactly what the real-life version is. But Here we got a Brownells Retro XM177.
Yes.
And that's a short, compact, AR-15 that definitely would have been used during the Cold War, 100%.
Very nice gun. I'm a fan of the retro stuff from Brownells. One of my relatives actually did some promotions with Brownells. I'll have to tell you about that back in the days. Not me. It's not me. If you look at it, it looks like me, but it's not me.
It's Lola.
No. It's not Lola either. That's one of her relatives.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to roll in something to show people what we're talking about there. But yeah, we did some stuff with that. And it's fascinating. I think just like the kids, like my kids play these games and then they start learning all the history and everything that's involved in it. And sometimes I feel like they know more than I do. And then you get into it and it's not just the gun. It's like learning, why was this gun made? How was it used? Distances and stuff like that. Effective distances are important in the game. Very cool gun, though.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a certain lore that kind of just separates things, right? The fact that these retro guns have really came back in a big way, when you see video games like this coming out, it solidifies it because video game culture and, real life culture blend quite a lot, right? So these younger folks get to checking out some of these cool guns in the games, and then they start going, hey, what the heck are these things about in real life? And it's just so cool to know that a company like Brownells has retro offerings that literally scratch the exact itch of what they're seeing in these video games, which is really cool.
You can get it, use it, touch it. So many cool features on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's gas operated, direct gas impingement. I mean, this is a staple in that particular video game because this definitely would have been a super common gun in the 80s floating around, and that configuration is very close to that. So in the pistol category, we chose a 1911. Now there's not, from what I can see, not that many handguns in the game. There's only 3 or 4 different handguns.
That's interesting.
Now the 1911 that's in the game is kind of a classic all-blued model with wood grips. This is also Brownells BRN 1911, but in this one is definitely 80s inspired with the two-tone finish, stainless steel. These are produced by Ed Brown for Brownells. And buddy, I mean, if you're gonna carry a 1911 into combat, I mean, that's a
So
nice
the thing is
piece of
that
hardware.
45 knockdown power, right? I'm just wondering in the game how...
Where did that accent... Did a redneck just walk in the room here?
I channeled that. So the one thing I always think about it is what was the magazine capacity? Or you have to be... I've seen guys who are really... people like me tend to think, I want, 20-round magazines. But I've actually seen guys that could change these magazines so fast, it's like a blur.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's amazing if you've trained and you know what to do with it, and then you got that 45.
When you got to think that
Rocking out of
operators back in the 80s, at the time that this video game is set in, most certainly would have been familiar with the 1911 because it was a very popular military issue pistol at the time, not only in service with the U.S., but all around the world. And, there's some old sayings that go back, they all fall to the 45 ball, two world wars. I mean, 1911s have their diehard fans that really like them, and they also have their diehard trolls that hate them.
Right.
There's no pistol, in my opinion, in the history of mankind that has been thrown into two different camps in such an extreme way as the 1911.
Yeah. And everyone should have one. So even if you're not a super fan of a 1911, but in the 80s, they wouldn't have been rocking Glocks, right? That wouldn't really have proved itself in that time.
Well, I mean, I think that you would definitely see something, some polymer frame guns starting to come out around that time, of course. But I think most of your operators and stuff would probably appreciate and use the 1911. So like John Lovell is not a fan of the 1911, and he was down here filming with us the other day, and he was like, it was a 1911. I'm not going to give away what the piece was that we did, but he had to shoot a 1911. And he was like, a 1911. But the dude proceeds to load the gun, rack it, and drill the target of a group this big as fast as he can pull the trigger. It's like, well, brother, what's there not what to
like? If you shoot them, you know why. So maybe if there are kids watching this and they don't understand why because they're looking at current stuff, if you actually shoot 1911s, you know why.
There is something really, really nice about the balance of this pistol. The trigger is excellent. I love the single action trigger on a 1911. It's a very intuitive gun to use. Yeah. It's a very robust gun.
Yeah. The user can tune this down too, like with some just simple skills. They could tune it down and make it run a lot better. So I've seen a lot of that. Yeah.
All right, so there's our couple of Brownells offerings with our XM177 and the BRN 1911. We're going to move down the line. One of the other, I hate to use the term, but they use this in the video game to describe the category, is assault rifles. Boys and girls, that's not a thing. Okay, that's a bullcrap term, but they do use that term in the game. The other assault rifle we have here, and I'm loosely using that term only for your benefit, but it's not a real term, they have a crink, and the AK-74U in 5.45 by 39. Now, this is a crink, but it's in 7.62 by 39. It's built on a PAP, which is a Yugo AK with a relatively thick receiver, 7.62 by 39, 10.5-inch barrel. This one is an SBR, so we have a folding stock mechanism, U.S. palm grip, and this is very indicative of the gun that is in the game.
Okay. So you chose to go with 7.62 versus 5.45?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a fan of 5.45.
Oh, me too.
I see why people really like the cranks, for example. That's like a softer shooting round. I like that myself. I don't know. I think we've had problems actually getting that round in for a little while. Maybe that's getting better these days.
Well, 7.6 is banned from import. Yeah. So a lot of the cheap 7.6 ammo is not really a thing anymore, which is unfortunate. And one thing I'll mention too, have you guys ever noticed, now this is more for my diehard gun people that are watching. I know some of the folks that are watching that are into video games and maybe getting into guns, you may understand this, but our diehard gun people, you ever notice how 5.45 AK pistols are almost non-existent? Anyone ever notice that or, make that correlation, right? So you're not going to buy an AK pistol chambered in 5.45 and put a brace on it or a stock or something. So the thing about a AK-74U or an underfolder or some form of a crink in 5.45 as a cartridge is that gun really has to be purpose-built from the ground up as a kit. You got to find a barrel, do all the machining work. Jim Fuller, Rifle Dynamics, he's definitely the AK guru.
Absolutely.
In that world, So, yeah, you'd have to get with someone like Jim Fuller and have one purpose built.
Yeah. Or get yourself a really good skills. Like, I know someone that built their own crank, but, I mean...
Well, it's not exactly an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
so
you can go badly wrong.
It's much more economical and just logistically easier to build an SBR. I say build loosely, but to assemble an SBR or set up one with a pistol brace in the United States than it is probably in other parts of the world, just because these are much more common.
Yeah, but outside outside, that crank is very popular.
Oh, yeah.
We've had some, like, notorious bad guys that have cranks. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's popular. And then also in the game, the AK-47 itself has, like, holds a special place in the hearts of the kids who play that game. My sons were explaining that to me.
So explain to me, what, they had to nerf the damage, or what were they calling
Yeah, they
that?
call it broken, and I was like, so if it's broken, that's a bad thing. They said, no, that's a good thing. Because the developers didn't intend it to be like this perfect weapon, but it does a lot of damage. So a lot of the kids like using it in the game, and it kind of like helps them get around the game and do better, but that's not really what the developers intended. And that's kind of like how people feel in real life about AKs, right?
I think so. I think,
and
the AK is automatically more damaging than any other gun because it's all scary looking and everything.
Yeah.
And I will mention, when I used to play Red Orchestra, and I'm giving away my age a little bit, but that older game, Red Orchestra, there's a full auto Mauser broom handle in that particular game. And I think it was one of those things that the developers didn't expect that cartridge, I guess, that gun to be as powerful as it was. And the rate of fire on it was so ridiculously fast. It was like obscenely fast. And you could just jump out of a ditch, and when someone was walking by and just go, "Rrr!" and it would do so much damage.
Right.
And you would hear them over there going, "Man!" like screaming. And I use the full auto Mauser broom handle when I play.
But it kind of like, it's video games following life. I mean, you can take over countries with AKs. It's proven. Everyone knows that. It's happened.
So I'm assuming that the villains in the new game are probably, using the AKs and stuff. But also operators that would go overseas and do certain missions and things like that would use captured weaponry, or sometimes even employ the enemy's weaponry, because, I know there's a lot of things thrown around, especially in the Vietnam War, where soldiers would use captured AKs because the NVA would hear the sound of a Kalashnikov, and it makes a very distinctive sound.
Yeah.
And they would go, "Oh, that's our guy shooting at us," and then it would give them a little time to get away, So little tiny
helps with the fog of war.
Yeah,
lots
the fog
of different
of war.
things. Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on to the sniper rifles, or long rifles in the game. There's a category for sniper rifles. There's a Remington 700 in the game, and back in the 80s, it would have been a very basic, stripped down, black stock, basic standard bolt handle, a standard bull barrel length. Real basic optic, So the Remington 700's been around a good minute, but back then it definitely wouldn't have been like the high-speed Remington that we have here on the table. So we do have a 700 to show you, but this is definitely on like the apex of a little bit higher-end Remington 700. I'm sure they would have liked to have had this in the 80s.
Yeah. So how does that happen? Is this something that people were using at home to hunt, and they just knew the rifle and how to use it, so it became more popular? Or was it purpose-built back then, you think, for that purpose?
Well,
take it out to war.
Both. So when Carlos Hathcock deployed to Vietnam, there were sniper programs, and they would train, on sniping as a skill set and everything like that, but the equipment they were using was really nothing more than like a hunting rifle, right? So Carlos Hathcock used a Winchester Model 70 and 30-06 with just a decent barrel length, heavy barrel, no suppressor or anything crazy like that, just a loud Winchester Model 70 and 30-06. And that was his gun of choice, right? So as police departments and militaries around the world, especially in the 80s, there was this big resurgence, right, of wanting to modernize equipment and wanting to kind of bring a lot of these people up to speed with the newest equipment. So, yes, by the time the 80s rolled around, sniper rifles, as we know them, would have been purpose-built, would have been purpose-driven. It wouldn't have just been some random hunting rifle for a long time, right, before especially police departments had SWAT teams that taught sniper tactics and things like that.
Okay.
It was not uncommon for a police armory to just have a hunting rifle, like a regular old basic Winchester or Remington hunting rifle, and that was their sniper rifle.
Exactly.
And it just wasn't a thing to have a purpose-built gun for that. They were just like, well, that's a hunting rifle, right?
Yeah,
so,
they've used it before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, this gun is set up, obviously, a little bit more purpose-driven. We got the L5 Badger bottom metal, so we can take magazines for quick mag changes. This one has a fluted 5R barrel. So all of these, the reason I wanted to show this rifle is because everything about this rifle would be considered now sort of more of a purpose-driven type of thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing missing from this rifle would be like a chassis system. So let's say that our soldiers in this Call of Duty video game took their Remington 700 and went in a time machine and came to our times now.
Right.
They would see this and go, all right, can we trade?
Absolutely. Now, the mount is one of the most important things on there. I found out the hard way. When I first started doing this stuff, I would get the cheapest mount.
Oh yeah,
Not a good idea.
that spur is sweet because you've got the level in there. See the bubble?
Oh yeah.
So see if you've
Yeah,
got
this
any,
looks really solid. I've never used any of these mounts,
and
but
if
it
you've
just
got
looks built.
a little bit of cant in the system,
You could tell.
you can help get that cant
Yeah.
out of there. So those long range shots, if the scope is not perfectly level, it can throw the shots off
Yeah.
at long range.
Yeah. That it's really a big deal, the mount, and people take it for granted when they're first getting into it.
Absolutely. Now, it's worth noting that if our guy in the video game took his Remington and got in a time machine and came until now, he could totally take that gun and drop it in a chassis system, add the bottom metal. He could turn it into this, even from back then. So the Remington as a platform is a proven platform, and it's been in use a long time. So it's really cool to think that it's remained relatively unchanged.
It's gone through a lot of generations, right? Not just the 80s.
Right. Well, it has, but the point is though is that as a gun design, it has held true for quite a long time. It's been a proven contender. All right, we're going to move on. So there's another. I guess what am I trying to say? A category that the guns fall in this game. And one of them is called, I believe, tactical rifles. So they don't call them assault rifles; they call them tactical rifles. And so the example that we have there is a Type 63. The Type 63 is a select fire SKS. And the weird thing is, the fact that they put that in this game is kind of strange to me because the Type 63 was not super popular. They found that the rate of fire was absolutely way too fast.
Really?
As a machine gun, it's ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
But the gun looks very similar to this. All right, so this is an Albanian SKS, and this particular gun uses a fixed box. The primary difference between a standard SKS and the Type 63 is that the Type 63 takes AK-47 magazines.
Okay. All right. So you can get, because I'm trying to figure out myself, what's the tactical advantage of having select fire on that? It just make it flexible, like you can have this one rifle and do a bunch of different things with it. If you're up close, you can.
Okay, well,
spit out a lot
so
of
the
rounds.
question would be, why would a soldier not just use an AK over that with an AK mag? That's
Right.
the question.
Yeah.
Longer barrel length, so you get more velocity
More
from the
reach.
longer barrel.
Yeah.
You get a longer sight radius, so you get a little bit better accuracy by having longer sight radius. And also, because this gun doesn't utilize a pistol grip or any kind of crazy, underfolding stocks, it has more of a rifle-like feel. So it's very easy to shoot in the prone.
Okay.
So soldiers
makes
back
sense.
then could definitely lay down very low in the prone, especially with the 10-shot model. You can get yourself very low. And so it was a stopgap type of thing.
Okay.
When the Chinese developed the Type 63, they did it for the purpose of having higher velocity, longer sight radius, and having more of a rifle-like feel, but without producing an AK. But what they found was that not only was the rate of fire too fast on the 63, the AK was just simply cheaper to mass produce.
Right.
So the 63 went the way of the Dodo because all milled receiver, they're just harder to make.
Okay.
More time required, and it just sort of went the way of the Dodo. And they're not very common guns. That's why I was surprised to see it show up in the game.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see how someone uses it, right? Because if you're really good at using this, you've got a lot of flexibility.
Absolutely.
If you know what you're doing. Okay.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
A,
Very cool.
a rifle that could be shot on single shot for precise shots, but also turned over to full auto to utilize some suppressive fire as well. And I would imagine in the game that's probably the role that it needs to fill.
Okay. Have you ever seen that in movies or anything like that?
I actually haven't seen the real deal Type 63 in a lot of media or movies, and especially in video games. So to my knowledge, it's the first video game that uses the Type 63.
Yeah.
So
someone
really
should
cool.
tell us, what they think about that in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're moving on to a favorite of mine.
Subguns.
Yes, subguns, and specifically the MP5.
Oh yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
So this is in the game.
Very 80s gun.
Yes. And you notice
The
we got some
epitome.
red tape here on the map. That's kind of a throwback to Die Hard.
Right. Exactly. So these are the ones we'll get you. The blue ones are the ones.
The blue ones are the blanks. The red ones are the live rounds.
Yeah. Die Hard, another good gun movie.
A Christmas movie.
Yeah. All of I shouldn't say all of them.
Die Hard's a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
I don't care what anybody says. It's a Christmas movie.
Absolutely.
Yippee-ki-yay.
So, yeah, I won't say the rest of it. Yeah, so this is, how long have people been using the MP5s?
They've been in use a long time. I believe the MP5, I hope I'm not too wrong on this, was developed like in the late 60s. So it's been around quite a while. It's a really, really awesome delayed roller blowback subgun. And look, in the 1980s, when this video game takes place, this Cold War game, this definitely would have been the king of the subguns. In the 80s, this was like the gun, right? If you look at 80s films, anything set in the 80s, right? And you look at some SWAT guy, running up, they've always got an MP5. And the configuration that this gun is in is very, very, very similar to the configurations that were the most popular with SWAT, law enforcement, special operators and things with the collapsible stock mechanism. If you just pop that paddle and just open her up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? I mean, nowadays, like you're saying, I think police departments or SWAT teams are moving to something else. I just recently got decommissioned MP5s. We got 2 of them from a SWAT team. So they cut them up and we're putting them back together. We've got one of those back together already. And I mean, I've shot MP5s a lot, full auto and everything. They're really easy guns. So I'm kind of surprised that we're going away from that. What do you think's the reason? Well, this is a good all-around.
It's an older gun design.
Gun. Okay.
I mean, it's an aging gun design.
Yeah, okay.
It is a little older. MP5s are excellent. They're still in use all over the world. They're definitely not being phased out completely anytime soon. I think that in the modern world that we live in, the reason the MP5 has fallen the way of the dodo more than not is with advents of things like the MP7, the FNP90, that shoots a higher velocity round. The P90 holds 50 shots. Okay. So for personal protection, or let's just say, you're doing security detail and you have to do a high value target detail and guard the president or something, your Secret Service, for instance, having 50 rounds of 5.7 is definitely more attractive than having 30 rounds in an MP5.
Yeah, someone with armor maybe.
Yes, and with the armor defeating capabilities of some of the types of modern ammunition in MP7 and in the P90, it definitely draws a few points away from the MP5. The MP5 is, a relatively large subgun compared to some of the stuff that's out there now. There's lots of smaller options out there now, and the MP5 is not really the tiny one anymore.
Yeah, it's sad to see that. It's sad to see them, like so many of them getting lost. And I hope there are more people out there putting them back together. I know there's a lot of clones coming out now for like the civilian market. Maybe these will become the next truck guns just because of the nostalgia.
I think the nostalgia is always going to be there.
Yeah.
People are always going to want MP5s. I think the thing that's going to keep it from becoming a staple, like you mentioned, truck guns, primarily is going to be because the cost.
Yeah.
They are very expensive.
Yeah.
And everything. So
that's the one thing. Even a clone is expensive, and definitely putting back something like we're doing with the SWAT guns.
Right.
It's even more.
Oh, it costs money. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we got to keep it alive.
That's right. All right. So these are. Now, there's a lot of honorable mentions that we could have, brought up in this particular video. I know there's another light machine gun category that is in the game. Now, obviously, I don't have light machine guns here to show you, but we have shot several from that era that are really awesome, like the M60. Operators, now, I'm not sure if it's in the game or not, but operators back in those days would have certainly been using the upgraded M60s and things and the shortened M60s, which are really, really, really awesome. And I would find it hard to believe that belligerents on both sides of the conflict wouldn't use like surplus PPSHs or PPSS-43s, things like that, just because of the ridiculous rate of fire. Oh, it's a great subgun.
Yeah, that's an awesome gun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so our wild card is a piece of cutlery. Okay, there is some melee weapons in the game, and there's a knife in the game that looks an awful lot like this Hogue here. This is the EXF01, and that's a Eiselschwitz design with G10 handles. I mean, that's
just beautiful.
That's an awesome piece of cutlery.
Nice chunky. So what would you use a knife for here? Just close-up fighting as a tool? What's, a
holdout.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, your pistol's out of ammo, your rifle's out of ammo, you have no means to protect yourself, you got to get down to the nitty-gritty, close in and personal, and I'll just mention, with a lot of video games, knives as a melee weapon tend to have a very high damage rate in video games.
Oh, okay.
And I think the reason is because they figure, well, if you're going to go up against a guy with a gun and try to use a melee weapon, they want to make it worth it for you to try to get knife kills. So
you have to be up close.
In a lot of the, I guess, the achievements you can unlock and things like that, if you get a certain amount of knife kills, you'll unlock achievements for using melee weapons. That's always a thing in every single first-person shooter game.
Okay.
So,
plus, you can use it to get a scorpion off of someone's shoulder.
That's right. Now, what was that? Commando?
Wasn't that Predator?
Oh, it's Predator. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So you get bonus points for that, I guess.
So is there an achievement for, stabbing a scorpion?
I guess. It's a great knife, though, and I could see how you could use it in a lot of different ways. So if you had one knife, you would do something like this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
And this is very, very similar to the one that's in the game. So I thought that'd be cool to show off.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. We tried to just have some fun and banter back and forth. Now, I know these aren't the exact guns that are in the game. We tried to get as close as we could, but we will be revisiting several other types of videos like this, so we hope you'll join us for that. We're going to try to do the Guns of Heat. That's Chad and I are going to do that one, so stay tuned for that. We've still got a few pieces to get for that one. I love that movie.
Me too.
It is such a great gun movie.
People look at that movie as training. They look at it for training.
A lot of operators say that what they were doing in that movie was pretty sound tactics.
Yeah, well, the actors did a lot of training. Even the extras and stuff like that did a lot of tactical training. So they really put a lot of effort into making it.
I know what movie I'm gonna go watch this evening for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, man. This is like bucket list for me.
Dude, we're going to do more of these. We're going to do more.
I'm looking forward to it.
Make sure that you go subscribe to Hank Strange. Check him out. Go to www.hankstrange.com.
Yes.
For all the ways you can follow him on all the different social media platforms. We're also on Parler. Make sure you check us out over there. Guys, have a great day. Many more videos on the way. All right, I'm going to go get a copy of that game and play it too.
Yes, we got to do that.
All right. Have a good one. See you next time.